At the start of the broadcast today, I covered Fox News, AP, you name it. Survivor details massacre of 72 migrants by drug cartel in Mexico. And he escaped. He says Los Zetas, who on record was trained by the CIA to go after the other drug cartels that they don't control. They work for the Mexican government. He is robbing and extorting and trying to force the migrants, mainly from Central and South America. That's who they killed. They don't tend to do it as, they still kill a lot of them, but not as many if they're Mexican citizens. So it's a form of nationalism against Central and South American migrants. And it's all part of the North American Union. And just a whole house full of 72 butchered, chopped up bodies. And the police are pulling up in front of mayors' houses in Mexico, dragging them out, murdering them in public. And this is all pouring over. And if you read Robert Pastor's own documents and his CFR plan for the North American Union that's being implemented by stealth, that's the key term, implementation by stealth, stealth integration of Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And under this new system, we don't have our liberties and freedoms. They're rewriting it. And Judicial Watch in 2006, they sued in 2007, got the Banff Canada Security Prosperity Partnership, NAU documents, and they said, we've got to keep it secret, the official minutes. We're taken over by stealth. We're going to use border crises as a pretext to merge the countries. Just like the banks use the derivatives crisis they created to get more power and set up a Bank of the World and a new derivatives tax, a new carbon tax, a new system, a new Ponzi scheme. And so all of this integrates in and dovetails with the information that Dan Dix covers. Now, I knew he'd put this film out a few months ago. More than a few months ago. It had to be like 6 months ago. And I'm so busy I didn't watch it. There's so many documentary films. I've interviewed him before as an activist fighting tyranny in Canada at the G20, but I hadn't watched it. And they sent us a copy and said, we'd like you to post this for your members at prisonplanet.tv. And so, and it took us about a month to get around to uploading it and all that and encoding it in the different formats. And I started watching it. It's a full-length film, and I couldn't quit. I mean, this is as high production quality as we have. Very skilled filmmakers, but it's not just that. It's who they got in the interviews that completely blew me away. So we are selling United We Fall, 3 nations, 2 sides, 1 union. Press for Truth presents a Bryan Law film with Dan Dix. And Dan Dix joins us via video link from Canada. Dan, break down why you made this film and the incredible interviews you got. Because somebody like myself, and we have called Pastor, the head globalist that wrote up the specific North American integration plan, and he wouldn't be interviewed. So because you're not as well known, you were able to get these interviews where top globalists admit we want world government. I mean, this is and the interviews look like PBS or something. I mean, you guys are talented cinematographers, talented researchers, incredibly talented graphics folks, and I just want to hail you and Bryan Law as amazing researchers and filmmakers.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. That means a lot to me coming from you. I really appreciate that. Thanks. No,
listen, I mean, it's no brag, just fact, as John Wayne would say. Break down why you made the film and what's in it.
Sure. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago. Bryan and I set out to make this film, which basically documents this push towards a North American Union, this concept of Canada, U.S., and Mexico coming together into a union, very similar to this European Union. We tracked it somewhat chronologically, going through the various trade deals throughout time, starting back as far as the general agreement on trade and tariffs. From there, we move on to the free trade agreement. Then we get, of course, into the North American Free Trade Agreement. And then after that, we touch on the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the North American Leaders Summit. And we show how these are all incremental steps which are pushing us towards this idea of a North American Union, and also how the North American Union in itself is another big step towards the even bigger picture of a global governing body. So that's what we set out to do nearly 2 years ago now. The film is 2 years in the making, and we just released it on Canada Day, actually, a few months ago. And yeah, seems to be going well.
Well, again, my film Endgame's almost 3 hours long. It covers the full spectrum of global government, spends about 35 minutes on the NAU. Your film, in a riveting, nonstop way in their own words. You've got them admitting it. It's not just Alex Jones showing documents and voicing it and saying, look what they said. You've actually got these people admitting it. And this is treason. This is a private corporate takeover of our governing system. It's giving corporations the power, just like we see BP, being above the states and the federal government in the Gulf. This is global corporate governance. Break down some of the people you got interviews with.
Sure, yeah, we really wanted to get this right from the horse's mouth, so we contacted a lot of the major players who were involved with the push towards this thing, members of the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, and of course the Canadian Council of Chief Executives. Some of these people, for instance, are Alan Gottlieb. He is a member of the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission. He was the former ambassador, Canadian ambassador to the States from 81 to 89. So these are top-level guys. We got Robert Pastor as well to speak to us, John Manley, who is now the president of the Canadian Council of Chief Executives. And we also spoke with Herbert Grubel, who is considered the founder of, or the father of the Amero. So we really did get the opinion of these guys from the horse's mouth. Setting up these interviews, we would basically, these guys have big egos, Alex, and we would basically massage their egos. We would say, I've read your documents, I've read your books, I'm very interested to get your opinion on deeper integration between the three countries. We would never use words like North American Union because we knew that might scare them off from wanting to talk to us. And we also knew that they would be doing background checks on us. So we did keep my name out of the emails because they would have found my website, my YouTube channel. I already made a film called The Nation's Deathbed on a similar topic. So we purposely left my name out of the emails. That way we wouldn't, tip them off as to the angle that we wanted to cover.
Well, this is a major coup, and because they're admitting global government, they're admitting their plan. And you talk about this, head of this corporate body in Canada, and when you read the SPP, North American Union documents, or the EU documents, it states that they give the power to these private corporate bodies. When you read the hundreds of pages of SPP documents that Judicial Watch got, it's the heads of the top U.S. corporations, about 45 or so, the heads of the biggest Canadian corporations, and the heads of the major Mexican corporations, the real owners, and they're there agreeing on the policy and then saying, we must do this by stealth. We must have a carbon tax. We'll use a flu crisis to merge the countries. We'll use an immigrant crisis to merge the countries. We'll play groups off against each other. It's still secret what Bush signed with Vicente Fox in Texas 2 years before that at Baylor. And so we have our presidents in open treason going under total corporate governorship. And now here we are with the North American Union. They did have a press conference in 2007 on the White House lawn. This is in Endgame with Merkel, Barroso, and Bush saying we're now merging the North American Union with the American integration. They don't call it union, using code words. And so that integration's already happening. And now they've bankrupted the economy, as we said they would, having their own IMF World Bank documents, 2002 BBC. They are now merging this entire system and coming out with a new Bank of the World, naming their new global SDR currency, the Bain Core. And it's all now coming out in the open, but they still try to deny it on the nightly news to the general public. They'll come out and admit it, but then still deny it. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I confronted Paul Martin about signing the SPP in 2005. I questioned him on his Bilderberg attendance. I asked him why he signed the SPP when there was no kind of referendum on it. And he basically shrugged it off as conspiracy theory. He made a joke about being in the Bilderberg group. So, yes, in the public eye, these guys often just shrug it off as conspiracy theory. You'll see in the film, Herbert Grubel says, I would put this concept into the same category as people who believe that Elvis Presley is still alive. So it's almost a bit of a doublespeak going on, because at one moment they will call it conspiracy theory, and then the very next moment they openly talk about this is exactly what we are doing.
Well, that's right. And you bring up that central point. That made international news when at a press conference to the Prime Minister, to the Canadian leader, you said, hey, you signed the North American Union Agreement, the SPP, secretly in Texas, and he just said, oh, that doesn't exist, ha, ha, ha. When it's on record, he did it. And then separately, the CFR, written by Robert Pastor, puts out a document that Congress then tries to pass as so-called immigration reform that is the North American ID card, and now they're offering hemispheric travel IDs in Mexico, in the U.S., and in Canada that are globally standardized. Let's talk more about the amazing documentary film, United We Fall, on the other side of this break.
Day after day, alone on a hill, the man with the foolish grin.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open the phones up for Dan Dix for the rest of the hour, dealing with Mexico being collapsed by design, the establishment 5 years ago launching a war against cartels they didn't control, knowing it would destabilize the country. The SPP documents show they wanted to use border crises to do this. It all ties together, and the magnitude of this corrupt offshore group of banks that have taken over the planet's finances through fraud, doing this by stealth is so outrageous, and if we can just expose it, it will implode. The film is United We Fall. It's available at prisonplanet.tv for members in high quality, or I suggest you support the filmmakers and us, our operation, and buy the DVD, United We Fall, $19.95. You can get a second copy, and when you buy a second copy of it to give family or friends, you get 3 films for free. Fabled Enemies, exposing 9/11, excellent film. How We'd Won the West, exposing the phony drug war and government drug dealing, and American Dictators. 3 films for free. We're running this special for 2 weeks. When you buy 2 copies of United We Fall, you get 3 films free. We have another special going. In fact, I'll show listeners this right now and then go back to our guest. And I'm only running this for 2 weeks. You know, we've been doing specials every 2 weeks. Terror Storm, How We'd Won the West, Fabled Enemies, Reflections and Warnings with Aaron Russo, and American Dictators. 5 films, $9.95. Hardcover, color cover, full-length films with extras. Even if you don't watch these and think you know it all, give them to people. $9.95, that's less than $2 a piece. People are going crazy over that special. Infowars.com. But the toll-free number to call in and talk to Dan Dix about the G20, about globalism, about what the North American Union means, how we can fight it, 1-800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Going back to Dan Dix, this is a short segment, long segment coming up, but, I mean, from their own documents, from interviewing them, from what you cover in the film, people go, well, it's part of, Star Trek that we're going to have one government. They've kind of preconditioned us with these fables, self-fulfilling prophecies, predictive programming, that this is a foregone conclusion. But this isn't a happy, lovey, utopian world government. This is a global corporate dictatorship that wants eugenics as their end game.
Yeah, well, Alex, one of my favorite scenes in the film is when we ask Robert Pastor his opinion on the idea that this North American Union could be leading towards a global governing body. And he looks at us and says, you mean one world government? And we say, yeah, what do you think about that? And just to watch him sit there and just stare at the camera and blink, and you could see the thought just going through his head. He had to choose his words very, very carefully. He didn't really know how to answer the question. And like a professional politician, he eventually kind of answered the question without actually answering the question, as they often do. But you could see that he was, stuck there. At the time, I was operating the B camera, and I just, I couldn't help but have a smile on my face. I was like, wow, this says a lot about this guy right now.
Yeah, what did he do? He paused for about 4 or 5 seconds and was blinking, literally like a deer in the headlights.
He was literally like a deer in the headlights. I think he was a little bit shocked that we would ask him such a question on camera. And I think it was a little bit more than 4 or 5 seconds. He sat there and just did not know what to say. And, that's one of my favorite scenes in the film.